A kid gets laughed at for selling lemonade. Then a billionaire shows up. Early morning sunlight spilled across Maplewood Drive as 11-year-old Evan Bright set up his lemonade stand at the end of his family's driveway. The day promised a cloudless sky, the kind of warm summer heat that made people thirst for something cool and refreshing. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak trees lining the street, and the scent of freshly cut grass hung in the air. In the distance, a few neighborhood kids pedaled their bikes, calling out to each other, their laughter echoing against the neat rows of suburban homes. Evan had woken up extra early, energized by a plan he'd spent weeks thinking about. He was going to make money by selling his homemade lemonade, not the powdered kind. He'd painstakingly squeezed fresh lemons last night, stirred in sugar and water, and then chilled the mixture overnight in the fridge. With some help from his mom, Kelly, he made sure the balance of tart and sweet was just right. He'd spent the better part of the morning scrawling out a sign in thick, bright marker. Lemonade, 50 cents. It wasn't fancy, but for a kid with limited art supplies, it did the job. He taped the sign to the front of the small folding table he'd set up. A big plastic pitcher of lemonade rested on top, along with a stack of plastic cups and a small bowl of change. Despite the simplicity of the scene, Evan's heart buzzed with excitement. He had pictured the lemonade stand in his mind for days. Kids zipping by on bikes, grown-ups walking dogs or jogging, and everyone pausing to quench their thirst. He'd greet them politely, show them his best grin, and collect coin after coin. The thought of earning his own money made him feel independent, almost grown-up. He had big dreams. One day, he wanted to open a chain of restaurants, like those big stories he sometimes read online about self-made entrepreneurs. Right now, it was just a humble lemonade stand, but in his mind, this was the first step. He set out a wicker chair behind the table. After checking that the sign was visible from the street, he settled down, placed a few coins in the bowl to make change, and waited. The warmth on his face felt comforting, and the day glowed with possibility. Half an hour passed with no customers. A couple of neighbors walked by, but they seemed in a rush and only offered polite nods. Still, Evan kept his smile. He'd read in a book that success required patience. So he waited, humming softly to himself. At last, a figure approached, Mr. Andrews, a retiree who lived a few doors down. He had thick-rimmed glasses and always carried a wooden cane. Evan perked up, beaming. When Mr. Andrews reached the table, Evan greeted him with bright enthusiasm. "Hi, Mr. Andrews. Would you like some lemonade? Only 50 cents a cup." Mr. Andrews gave a small, grandfatherly smile. "Morning, Evan. Lemonade? Huh. That's perfect for this heat. I'll take a cup." He fished in his pocket and handed Evan 2 quarters. Evan carefully poured the lemonade, handing the cup over with a hint of pride. Mr. Andrews took a sip. That's good," he said. "Fresh squeezed, I can tell." Evan felt warmth balloon in his chest. "Yeah, I made it last night. Thanks for buying." Mr. Andrews nodded, took another sip, and told him, "Keep the good work up. Someday, you might be a big-shot businessman." He gave a little wink, then strolled off, cane tapping softly on the sidewalk. Evan's grin stayed plastered to his face as he watched Mr. Andrews fade down the street, his first sale in the bag. He couldn't wait to tell his mom. 2 quarters. It wasn't a fortune, but it felt like a gold mine. This was going to be an amazing day. The morning stretched on, and a few more neighbors stopped by. An older couple walking a tiny terrier, a jogger who panted a quick thanks, and 2 teenage girls who giggled as they rummaged for spare change. By noon, the temperature crept higher. Evan had sold maybe 10 cups total. He was proud of each sale, though he'd begun to realize that success wouldn't happen all at once. Still, the small wins fueled his determination. He was daydreaming about potential ways to attract more customers, maybe adding cookies to the menu or creating bigger signs, when he heard rowdy voices from up the street. His stomach gave a tiny lurch. Recognizing the voices, he saw a group of middle school kids, Travis, Corey, and Lindsay. They were older than him by a couple of years, part of that clique that always seemed to have a biting remark for anyone they deemed uncool. Their laughter carried on the summer breeze, directed his way as they spotted him. "Hey, check it out," Travis called, loud enough for Evan to hear across the yard. "Little lemonade boy." Evan's cheeks warmed. He tried to keep his posture confident, chest out, just like he'd read about in a motivational blog, but his heart thumped nervously. The three approached, swagger in their steps. Travis led the pack, tall for his age, with a mop of unkempt hair. Corey and Lindsay flanked him, wearing wide smirks. Lindsay tossed her ponytail. "A lemonade stand? Seriously, Evan? That's so babyish." Corey snickered. "You think you're going to get rich off us or something?" Travis leaned over the table, eyes scanning the sign. He read it mockingly. "Lemonade 50 cents. Wow, big spender. You're going to need more than that to buy a candy bar these days." The group erupted in laughter. Evan's face burned, but he tried to stay polite, like a professional salesperson. "Would you like to buy some?" he asked, voice wavering slightly. Travis sneered. "Nah, I got better ways to spend my money. This is lame. You're just a little kid playing store." A pang shot through Evan's chest. He tried to muster a reply, something witty or confident, but his throat felt tight. The bullies weren't done. Corey pointed at the pitcher. "Bet that's not even real lemonade. Probably just water with lemon slices." Travis drummed his fingers on the table, making it rattle. "Dude, maybe if you were older, you'd know how to hustle properly. This is so pathetic." "Come on, Travis," Lindsay said, giggling. "Let's get out of here before we catch loser syndrome." They all burst into more laughter. Evan stood there, silent, gripping the edge of the table. He wished the ground would swallow him up. The sense of humiliation burned in his stomach. He tried to keep a brave face, but tears threatened to well at the corners of his eyes. The trio strolled away, still chuckling. Travis called over his shoulder, "Have fun, lemonade boy." When they turned the corner, their voices faded, leaving Evan in a heavy silence. He sank onto his wicker chair. The sun felt hotter now, and the sound of a passing car only underscored how alone he felt. He stared at the pitcher of lemonade. The bully's words replayed in his mind, babyish, pathetic little kid. He blinked hard, determined not to cry. He'd put so much heart into this venture. But now, stinging shame eroded his confidence. For a few minutes, he considered packing up and calling it quits. Maybe they were right. Maybe no one cared about a kid selling lemonade. Maybe this was silly. After all, he had only made a few bucks the entire morning. Was it really worth it? But as his gaze drifted to the coins in the plastic bowl, he remembered how proud he felt with each sale. A warm memory of Mr. Andrews praising him flickered in his mind. He took a breath, steeling himself. He tried to recall the bigger dream, earning money, learning how to run a business. If he let a bunch of bullies chase him away, would that solve anything? He decided no. With shaking hands, he adjusted the sign. Lemonade 50 cents. Then he stood, poured himself a small sample cup, sipped it. The tart sweetness comforted him. This was good lemonade. He believed in it, and maybe that had to be enough. "I'm not quitting," he whispered to no one, but it felt like a vow. "I'll keep going." He settled back into his chair, the hot breeze ruffling his hair, and waited. Half an hour slid by. A woman speed walked past, barely giving him a glance. An SUV rumbled along, ignoring him completely. The sting of the bully's taunts lingered, threatening to overshadow everything. His back felt tense, his spirit sagged, and for a moment he doubted again. But he forced himself to stay put. It was nearing mid-afternoon when he heard another set of footsteps. At first, they were distant, but they approached at a leisurely pace. Evan straightened, hoping for a customer. Maybe a neighbor he hadn't met yet. Then he noticed something unusual. The man walking up the sidewalk was wearing a tailored suit, a crisp white shirt beneath a dark navy jacket, with polished shoes that gleamed in the sun. That was odd around here, especially on a casual summer day. People wore shorts and t-shirts or casual slacks, not business suits. Who was this? The man had short, neat hair with a sprinkling of silver at the temples and a confident stride. He carried no briefcase or phone in hand, just walked calmly along the sidewalk, occasionally glancing at the suburban houses as if admiring the neighborhood. As he drew nearer, Evan realized the man looked vaguely familiar, though he couldn't place why. Maybe he resembled someone from TV or a magazine ad. When the man noticed the lemonade stand, his eyebrows rose in mild surprise. He gave a hint of a smile and changed his course, heading straight toward Evan. Something about his eyes, the calm intensity, made Evan's heart flutter with nervousness. "Hello," the man said in a smooth baritone voice. "Lemonade for sale?" Evan forced a polite nod. "Yes, sir. 50 cents a cup." The man seemed genuinely pleased. "I'd love one. It's a warm day after all." Evan scrambled to stand, nearly knocking his wicker chair back. "Sure thing," he said. He reached for a cup, then paused. "Would you like ice?" The man's grin broadened. "Ice would be great if you have it." Evan had a small cooler at his feet with a few half-melted ice cubes. He took a fresh cup, plopped in 2 cubes, and then poured the lemonade carefully from the pitcher. His hand shook slightly with nerves. "Here you go," he said, offering the cup. "Thank you," the man said, dropping 2 quarters onto the table. "Keep the change." He took a sip. Fresh squeezed?" Evan brightened. "Yes, sir. I squeezed the lemons last night. My mom helped me with the sugar part." The man nodded, taking another sip. "Delicious. You mind if I stand here in the shade for a minute? It's been a busy day for me." "Sure," Evan said, eyes wide. The man's presence exuded a certain quiet confidence. Are you from around here?" The man chuckled. "Not exactly. I'm from a city, just visiting a friend who lives a couple blocks away. Decided to take a walk." Evan mustered some courage. "I like your suit. Looks expensive." Another soft laugh. "Thank you. It's well made, yes. I've found it's worth investing in nice things, if you can." He paused, studying Evan with curiosity. "So, you're an entrepreneur, I see. How's business?" Evan's cheeks flushed. The memory of the bullies stung. "Well, it was good this morning, but not so many people lately. And some kids came by and said it was, lame. They made fun of me." The man nodded sympathetically. "That can happen. People sometimes don't see the value in what you do, or they project their own insecurities onto you." He took another sip, savoring the lemonade. "But you clearly put effort into this. Fresh lemons, a homemade sign, a brand identity, you might say." He pointed at the sign with a small grin. Evan felt a swell of pride, though he kept his tone modest. "I just really wanted to sell lemonade. Earn some money on my own." "That's commendable," the man said. He peered into the cup as if memorizing the taste. "A lot of folks talk about doing things, but not everyone actually takes action. I respect that." Evan bit his lip, curiosity rising. "Thanks. So, do you do something in business?" The man seemed amused by the question. "You could say that, yes. I started a company a while back. It's grown over the years. Now I invest in various ventures." "Oh," Evan said. He tried to recall if he'd seen that man's face in some business article. Something nagged at him, but he couldn't pinpoint it. Then a new thought struck him. "Wait, are you Richard Langford? That billionaire guy?" A subtle flicker crossed the man's features, surprise, then perhaps a hint of pride. "You've heard of me?" Evan's eyes went wide. He'd read about Richard Langford in a magazine at the library. Supposedly, he was worth billions, known for building a tech empire from nothing. The memory was fuzzy, but the face was right. Salt and pepper hair, that calm smile. Yeah, I read about you. You started some huge software company. Richard gave a small nod. Guilty as charged. I didn't realize I was that recognizable. But, yes, I'm Richard Langford. A jolt of excitement pulsed through Evan. He was standing at his lemonade stand, talking to a billionaire. This was unbelievable. The bully's jeers seemed to vanish from his mind. Instead, adrenaline fueled him. I can't believe it's you, he stammered. Why are you here in my neighborhood? I came to see a friend, as I mentioned, Richard said, finishing his lemonade. He held the empty cup. Saw your stand, figured I'd grab a drink. And I'm glad I did. He paused. I hope you don't mind my lingering a bit. It's peaceful out here. Evan's pulse raced. No, it's fine. You can stay as long as you want. Then he noticed the man's empty cup and quickly added, Would you like a refill? On the house. Richard chuckled. On the house? You sure about that? I can pay more. Evan flashed a shy smile. It's okay. You're my guest. Richard nodded. Well, thanks. A little top-up would be nice. Evan poured carefully, handing the cup over. Meanwhile, his mind whirled with questions. Should he ask for business advice? Should he tell him about the bullies? He wasn't sure if that was appropriate, but something about Richard's demeanor, friendly yet composed, made him want to confide. He decided to test the waters. Mr. Langford, can I ask you something? Of course, came the gentle response. You said people sometimes project insecurities when they put others down. I had some older kids show up earlier and mock me. It had made me feel like maybe I should quit. He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. But I don't want to. I really like this, and I have bigger dreams. It's just that stuff hurts, you know. Richard's gaze softened, reflecting empathy. It does hurt, he agreed. And it never fully goes away, even when you're older. But the key is to focus on your goal, not on what others say to tear you down. Sometimes people mock things they don't understand or things they wish they had the courage to do. And that's not your burden to carry. Evan nodded, absorbing the words. I guess. It's hard, though. They made me feel dumb. Richard gave a compassionate tilt of his head. I understand. Let me tell you a small story. When I was your age, I tried to start a lawn mowing business. Some neighborhood kids teased me, said it was pointless. But I loved machines and earning my own money. Eventually, I saved enough to buy my first computer. That computer changed my life because it introduced me to programming. So the question is, would you rather give in to their teasing or keep walking your path? I want to keep going, Evan said quietly. Then he laughed at his own boldness. I mean, I'm not sure if a lemonade stand is my path to billions, but it's something. Hey, never underestimate a humble start, Richard said, smiling. But don't do it just for money. Do it because you enjoy learning, building, and seeing your ideas come to life. That's what truly matters. Evan mulled over the words. They resonated strongly. The notion that even a small venture, like a lemonade stand, could be a stepping stone. Thanks, he said softly. I appreciate that. Just then, a squeal of laughter erupted from down the street. The same trio, Travis, Corey, and Lindsay, rounded the corner again. They must have done a loop around the block. Evan's stomach clenched. Of all times, he didn't want them to come back now, and especially not in front of Richard Langford. But there was no way to avoid it. Travis noticed the stand first. He smirked, leaning over to Corey and muttering something. The three strolled closer, obviously ready for more mockery. Then they caught sight of the well-dressed man sipping lemonade. Their brows furrowed. Travis slowed. Hey, who's that? He muttered to Corey. Corey shrugged. Dunno. Must be some random grown-up. Lindsay peered at Richard's suit. Looks fancy. Maybe it's the kid's dad. They approached the table, grinning slyly. So lemonade boy, Travis said, voice dripping with sarcasm. You got a new friend? Richard looked at them politely. Hello there, he said calmly. Interested in a drink? Corey snorted. Yeah, right. We're not babies who need lemonade stands. We can get real drinks at the store. Travis elbowed him, stepping forward. So, old man, you actually paying for that? Or is it pity money you're giving the kid? Evan bristled, embarrassment flaring again. But he noticed that Richard seemed completely unruffled. The billionaire offered a tranquil smile. I paid, yes. And the lemonade is quite good. The bullies traded skeptical looks. Lindsay crossed her arms. He's just a kid. This is so lame. Richard regarded them with a thoughtful expression. Is it lame to learn about business at a young age? Or is it more impressive that Evan took initiative? Travis opened his mouth to retort, but Richard continued, calm yet unyielding. Maybe you think you're too old or cool for lemonade, but let me tell you something. In the real world, it takes courage to start anything, from a small stand to a big company. People who mock that might be missing the point. The trio went quiet. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Travis's face. He stammered, You don't know us. We're just, he trailed off as he locked eyes with Richard. There was something about the man's presence, a self-assuredness that radiated power, but not intimidation. Travis glanced at Evan, then back at Richard. Corey coughed. Whatever, he mumbled, trying to sound aloof. This is dumb anyway. Lindsay tossed her ponytail again, though less confidently. Come on, guys, let's go. Travis hesitated, then turned away. He barked a final parting shot. You'll never get rich with some crummy stand, lemonade boy. But the usual cruelty in his voice sounded weaker than before. They walked off, though their posture was less mocking, more uncertain. Evan exhaled, tension draining. He glanced at Richard. Thanks, he said softly. You really told them. Richard shook his head gently. I just spoke the truth. They'll either learn from it or not. But at least you know you're not in the wrong for trying something. Don't let them scare you. Evan nodded, relief mingling with awe at how Richard had handled the situation. As the bullies vanished around a bend, he felt triumphant in a quiet way. For once, he hadn't been left feeling powerless. Instead, it felt like he had an ally who truly understood. The late afternoon sun slanted across the yards, painting them in warm gold. Richard checked his watch. I should probably head to my friend's place soon. But before I go, let me ask, do you have any bigger goals with this lemonade stand? Something you'd like to do with your earnings? Evan thought for a moment. Well, I kind of want to save up for a new bike. Mine's falling apart. And maybe in the future, if I earn enough, I'd like to, expand. Sell cookies or something. Or maybe do a neighborhood event. Richard smiled. That's a start. Always good to have a vision. He pulled out his wallet, extracted a crisp bill, and placed it on the table. Evan's eyes widened. It was a $50 bill, far beyond what he expected. Here's a little extra, Richard said. Buy more supplies, or save it for your bigger dreams. Or both. Evan gaped. That's a lot of money. I can't. Richard raised a hand to silence the protest. Consider it an investment. Someday, I might come back and expect to see how you've multiplied it. He winked. I believe in the power of a small start. Still stunned, Evan gently picked up the bill. Thank you, he whispered, heart thudding with gratitude. I'll use it wisely. I trust you will. Richard set his empty cup down. Well, I should be on my way. But one last piece of advice. Never let laughter or doubt stop you from trying something you care about. That's how you build resilience and success. Okay. Evan nodded, eyes shining. Okay. Thanks so much, Mr. Langford. With a nod of farewell, Richard walked off down the sidewalk, disappearing around the bend. Evan remained still for a long moment, the $50 bill clutched in his hand, his mind whirling with excitement, gratitude, and a renewed sense of determination. He replayed Richard's words in his mind. Never let laughter or doubt stop you. The day had gone from utter humiliation to an unbelievable encounter with a billionaire who believed in him. It felt like a dream. That evening, Evan eagerly told his mom the entire story over dinner. Kelly, a practical woman with a warm smile, initially looked skeptical when Evan mentioned Billionaire. But as he recounted the details, her eyes widened. She recognized the name Richard Langford from news headlines. "Are you serious?" she asked, half laughing in disbelief. "He gave you $50? Evan nodded, pulling out the bill as proof. Kelly let out a breathy laugh. "Well, that's incredible. Guess your lemonade stand made quite an impression." Evan beamed. He said it was an investment. "Maybe I should buy more lemons and expand." Kelly considered. "We can buy more supplies, sure. But how about we put some of it aside for your bike fund, and the rest invest in the stand? Sound fair?" He nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, I want to keep going. I don't want to let those bullies scare me away." Kelly placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You shouldn't, honey. I'm proud of you for staying out there. Starting something takes guts." The next day, after some chores and errands, Evan asked his mom to drive him to the store to pick up extra lemons, sugar, and even a few packs of small paper cups. He decided to brand his stand a bit more, maybe paint the sign in bright colors, add a small line below. "Evan's Lemonade, fresh and delicious." He used some of the leftover money to do just that. After a few hours of crafting, the sign looked more professional. With Kelly's help, he also taped a small balloon to the corner of the table to catch attention. By mid-afternoon, he was back at his usual spot, a fresh pitcher ready, sign newly improved, and confidence rekindled. Customers trickled by. A man on a bicycle paused to buy a cup, praising the taste. An older woman in a wide-brimmed hat purchased 2 cups to take home. Evan felt the lull of the hot sun, but each sale rejuvenated him. He wasn't making a fortune, but the steady stream of coins and an occasional dollar bill built up in his plastic bowl. It felt good, like he was proving to himself that he could do it, no matter what the bullies said. Sure enough, around 4 o'clock, Travis and his friends showed up again. Evan's pulse quickened. He clenched his jaw, expecting more insults. But to his surprise, they slowed, stared at his new sign, and said nothing. Travis opened his mouth as if to taunt, but he hesitated. Corey and Lindsay looked similarly uncertain. None of them made a move to buy anything, but they didn't laugh either. Instead, they just lingered awkwardly for a moment, then drifted on. Evan released a breath. Maybe Richard's words had made them think twice. Or maybe they just realized it wasn't fun to bully someone who refused to quit. Regardless, Evan took it as a small victory. Days passed, and Evan maintained his stand whenever he had free time. He changed the location occasionally, once near the community park, once near a busy intersection close to a local grocery store. Each day, he discovered new ways to entice customers, sometimes offering a 2-for-1 deal or adding a sign that said "made with real lemons." He built a routine, waking up early to squeeze lemons, measuring sugar carefully, and chilling the mix. He even experimented with a strawberry-infused lemonade, stirring in crushed berries for a pinkish hue. That sold well, especially among the neighborhood moms. The bullies still roamed, but they no longer seemed interested in mocking him so overtly. Instead, they just passed by with bored expressions. Evan was fine with that. He'd found a certain calm in focusing on his own progress. He'd saved nearly $40 from his profits in a small jar labeled Bike Fund, and he felt proud each time he dropped in new coins and bills. As the end of summer approached, the weather grew scorching, and his lemonade stand thrived in the heat. On one particularly blistering afternoon, Evan set up near the grocery store, with permission from the store manager, who admired the boys' initiative. People buzzed in and out, grateful for a quick cold drink. The swirl of traffic made the environment lively. Evan was busy, hardly sitting down, constantly pouring cup after cup. At some point, he noticed a sleek black car pulling into the grocery lot. It was a luxury sedan, the type that practically screamed wealth. He watched with mild interest. He'd seen fancy cars before, but not often in this small town. Then, to his astonishment, Richard Langford stepped out of the driver's seat, wearing a casual polo and khaki pants this time, no suit. He scanned the parking lot, and his gaze landed on Evan. A broad grin spread across his face. Evan's heart soared. He waved, beckoning him over. Richard approached, still exuding that calm confidence. "Evan," he greeted, "I see you've expanded your location." Evan nodded eagerly. "Yeah, the grocery store manager let me set up here. I sell way more cups on hot days. People come out of the store and want something cold. It's been really busy." Richard surveyed the stand, noticing the sign that had been improved again, now with a mention of strawberry lemonade. "I see you're branching out into new flavors," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Impressive." Evan beamed. "Yeah, it's been popular. Want to try a cup?" Richard took out his wallet. "Absolutely. Though this time, I'll pay the standard rate." He handed over a $1 bill. "Keep the change." Evan poured a cup of strawberry lemonade, the pinkish liquid swirling around ice. Richard took a sip, savoring it. "Delicious," he said. "Perhaps you should consider naming your brand something catchy. Brand identity helps." Evan laughed. "I've been thinking about Evan's Zesty Lemonade or something like that, but I'll work on it." He felt a surge of joy that the billionaire had come back, that he was genuinely curious about the stand's progress. "How are you?" he asked shyly. "Everything good with your work?" Richard nodded. "Work is never-ending, but I like to check in on my investments." He shot Evan a playful wink. "I see you're putting my little contribution to good use." Evan grinned. "I saved most of it, actually. I used some for supplies, and the rest is for my bike fund." He hesitated, then mustered courage. "Thank you for the advice, by the way. Your words about ignoring negativity really helped. I kept going because of that." A warmth sparkled in Richard's eyes. "Glad to hear it. Perseverance is key in any venture, big or small." He took another sip. "So, have you told your classmates about your stand?" Evan shrugged. "A few friends know, but we're on summer break, so I don't see them often. The older kids around the neighborhood teased me at first, but I guess they calmed down." Richard nodded. He glanced around at the passing customers, a thoughtful expression on his face. I have an idea," he said slowly. "If you're interested in scaling up a bit. Next weekend, there's a community fair in the city. Local businesses set up stalls. Families come from all over. If you set up a stand there, you might get a ton of customers." Evan's heart thumped. A community fair in the city? That sounded big, maybe even intimidating. But would I be allowed? I mean, it's usually for grown-ups, right? Richard waved a hand dismissively. "Not necessarily. It's open to all. You'd probably need a small permit, but I can help arrange that. I have connections. We just need to mention that it's for a youth entrepreneur. People love that." Evan's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be awesome. I'd have to see if my mom can drive me, though." Richard chuckled. "Yes, parental permission is crucial. But if she says yes, I can give you the details. I think you could do well there, especially if the weather stays warm. And it'd be a great learning experience." Suddenly, the future felt even broader. Evan pictured a bustling fair, lines of people in front of his stand. Maybe he'd have to rope in a friend or his mom to help pour cups. The idea gave him a thrilling jolt of excitement. "I'll definitely ask her," he said breathlessly. "Thank you for offering, Mr. Langford." Richard finished his lemonade, setting the cup down. "My pleasure. Just let me know. Here, take my card." He pulled out a neat business card from his wallet, handing it over. On it was his name, a minimalistic logo, and a personal phone number. Evan held it like a prized treasure, careful not to bend it. "Wow, thanks," he said. "I'll call you, or my mom can call you once we decide." Richard nodded. "I look forward to hearing from you. Keep up the great work, Evan." With that, he waved goodbye, returning to his car. Evan watched him drive away, that sense of wonder reappearing. Over the last few weeks, he'd gone from being ridiculed by bullies to forging a surprising connection with a billionaire. Life could be strange, but in the best way, it seemed. When Evan told Kelly about the community fair invitation, her eyebrows shot up in surprise. "He wants to help you set up in the city? That's quite an opportunity," she said, sounding both excited and cautious. "He said he can get me a permit," Evan explained, voice brimming with eagerness. "We just need to bring the lemonade stuff. It's only next weekend. Can we do it, Mom?" Kelly tapped a finger to her lips. "I don't see why not. I can drive you, help you set up. But you'll have to do most of the work, making the lemonade, manning the stand, dealing with customers. It'll be busier than this street, that's for sure. Are you ready for that?" Evan nodded vigorously. "Yes. I mean, I might need extra pitchers, or maybe a cooler to keep more lemonade cold. But I'm ready." Over the following days, they prepared meticulously. Kelly borrowed a second cooler from a neighbor, and they purchased enough lemons to fill 2 grocery bags. Evan used his newly acquired design sense to create a bright banner reading, "Evan's Lemonade, City Fresh." He also decided to add the strawberry version to his offerings, making a separate sign for that. He'd never worked so hard on something outside of school, and yet it felt exhilarating, not like a chore. The night before the fair, he and Kelly stayed up late, juicing lemons and stirring sugar water. Their kitchen was awash in the citrusy scent, which clung to the air even when they opened the windows. He worried about the taste, checking it constantly. Kelly teased him, "You're going to wear out your taste buds, honey." But he wanted it perfect. This was his biggest day yet. Finally, Saturday morning dawned bright and hot. Perfect lemonade weather. They loaded the car with coolers, pitchers, signs, paper cups, and a folding table. Evan double-checked everything, heart pounding with anticipation. Then they set off for the city, about a 20-minute drive from their suburb. The fair sprawled across a large park on the outskirts of downtown. Tents and booths dotted the grassy field, with crowds already milling about. The air bristled with lively energy, music from a local band, the smell of fried foods, kids shrieking with joy on bounce houses. Kelly found a parking spot near the designated vendors area. They lugged the supplies to an empty booth space that, according to the permit Richard had arranged, belonged to Evan for the day. The sign overhead read, "Youth Entrepreneur Zone," and a small placard had Evan's name on it. Pride surged in him. They set up the table, draped a cloth, attached the banner carefully. Kelly helped arrange the cups, while Evan made sure the pitchers were ready, a container of ice on hand. The sun rose higher, the morning heat intensifying. People began wandering through the vendor lanes, glancing curiously at everything from artisan crafts to homemade jams. Some kids sold crafts or cookies. Evan felt a sense of camaraderie. He wasn't the only young seller here, but it seemed he had the only lemonade stand in this row. And then the customers came. First, a mother with 2 young children approached, both kids tugging on her arm, pointing at Evan's sign. "Oh, lemonade," the mom exclaimed. "That's perfect. We've been walking all morning." She bought 3 cups, praising the fresh taste. Before Evan could catch his breath, 2 more people lined up behind her. Then a man in a broad sun had asked about the strawberry flavor. As Evan poured cup after cup, money clinked in his bowl. Kelly hovered behind the table, offering moral support but letting Evan handle transactions. It was a whirlwind of activity. By midday, he'd sold more cups than he typically sold in 2 or 3 days combined on his street. As the hours passed, the crowd didn't wane. Kids, parents, older couples, even fellow vendors, all wanted a cold drink. Evan's face glowed with sweat, and he occasionally paused to wipe his forehead, but adrenaline fueled him. He realized that a city fair was a goldmine for a well-placed lemonade stand. Toward mid-afternoon, he'd almost run out of lemonade. A pang of panic struck, people were still coming, but his last pitcher was down to the dregs. He quickly whispered to Kelly, "We're almost out. Should I run to a store for more lemons?" Kelly glanced around. "The store is a few blocks away, but we have limited sugar and water left, too. Might be tough to whip up another big batch here. Evan bit his lip, scanning a line of people. He hated the thought of turning them away. Then he remembered the leftover strawberry concentrate he had in a cooler. I can stretch the supply if I mix some of the concentrate with regular lemonade, he murmured. I'll do half and half. That might last until we're truly done. Kelly nodded. Go for it, but do it quickly. Evan scrambled, combining the liquids in a half-empty cooler, stirring vigorously. The end result was a mild strawberry-lemon blend, paler than before, but still refreshing. He labeled it as mixed berry lemonade, sold while supplies last. The line advanced, and he kept selling. Some customers noticed a difference in color, but as soon as they tasted it, they smiled in approval. By the time the sun started dipping westward, Evan's arms ached, and his voice was hoarse from shouting, "Lemonade here." But he was exhilarated. The bowl of money was stuffed, ones, fives, tens, even a couple of 20s. He'd never seen so much cash in one place for something he made himself. The day was an overwhelming success. Around 5 in the evening, foot traffic slowed. Vendors began packing up as the fair wound down. Evan and Kelly high-fived. "We did it," he exclaimed, half laughing in disbelief. That was insane. Kelly's eyes sparkled. "I'm so proud of you, honey. You worked tirelessly. Let's count your earnings once we get home, huh?" Evan nodded, a grin plastered on his face. He glanced around for Richard Langford, wondering if he might appear. He scanned the crowd, but didn't see the billionaire. Maybe he was too busy or had other commitments. Still, Evan felt grateful for the chance he'd provided. He was about to start dismantling the stand when a familiar voice rang out behind him. "Running out so soon?" Evan spun around. There stood Richard, wearing casual jeans and a light shirt. He was holding a small bag that looked like it contained freshly baked bread from another stall. He must have come from the far side of the fair. Evan's face lit up. "Mr. Langford, you made it." Richard approached, noticing the half-empty pitcher. "Looks like you did some serious business today," he remarked, eyebrows raised. "Your sign is covered in check marks and scribbles." Evan laughed. "We sold out, basically. Probably sold hundreds of cups. I can't believe it." Richard gave a pleased nod. "I can. Hard work, a good product, and a perfect location. That's all it takes." He motioned around the booth. "Did you enjoy the experience?" Evan's eyes shone. "Yes, it was awesome. Tiring, but awesome. I learned so much about dealing with lines, how to handle running out of supplies. People really liked our lemonade. I made a good chunk of money, too." Richard glanced at Kelly, offering a polite smile. "You must be the supportive parent behind all this." Kelly extended her hand. "Yes, I'm Kelly, Evan's mom. Thank you for helping him get the permit. This was an incredible day for him." Richard shook her hand. "My pleasure. Evan's got drive. I just nudged the door open." He turned back to Evan. "So, are you going to keep going with this? Summer's almost over, but you might find ways to sell on weekends." Evan considered. He felt a bit exhausted, but the prospect of continuing was exciting. "Yeah, maybe. I also have school soon, so I can't do it every day. But maybe Saturdays. I want to keep saving for a bike. Actually, after today, I might have enough to get a nice one and still have leftover money for next summer stand." Richard's smile was full of approval. "You see how it can multiply. Keep that entrepreneurial spirit alive, Evan. Who knows where it might lead you?" A swirl of gratitude rose in Evan's chest. A few weeks ago, he'd been humiliated by bullies, feeling small and silly for selling lemonade. Now he just had a day that felt like a triumph, thanks in large part to Richard's guidance and encouragement. He took a breath. "Thank you, Mr. Langford," he said earnestly. "You helped me more than you know. I want to repay you someday. Maybe buy you dinner when I'm older," he joked, though sincerity laced his voice. Richard laughed softly. "I look forward to it. Just remember, it's not about repaying me. It's about paying it forward. If you ever see someone trying to start something new, offer them a kind word or support. That's how we build a better world." Evan nodded, storing that advice. He had a vision. Maybe years down the line, he'd succeed in some bigger business, become a mentor to another kid. The idea warmed him. "I promise I'll do that." Richard patted Evan's shoulder. "Well, I should let you pack up. I just wanted to see how you were doing and congratulate you in person." He offered a final handshake, which Evan accepted, feeling that same wave of awe at the casual handshake from a billionaire. Kelly and Evan thanked him again, and he strolled off into the lingering crowd. As he left, a sense of finality settled in, a chapter concluding, but a bright future open. They packed up the supplies, loaded everything back in a car, and headed home. On the drive, Evan gazed out the window, replaying the day's moments, the lines of customers, the clink of coins, the cold thrill of handing over cup after cup. He felt powerful, not in a boastful way, but in the sense that he'd discovered something about himself. He could dream, plan, persevere, and succeed, even in the face of ridicule. When they arrived home, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in purples and oranges. Kelly and Evan unloaded the gear. Then, in the living room, they counted the money. Over $200 in sales. Evan's mouth dropped open. That was more than he'd ever held. Minus supply costs, he still netted a tidy profit. Enough for the bike he wanted, plus more. He looked at Kelly, eyes shining. "I never thought I'd earn this much in one day. I can get a really good bike." Kelly gave him a proud hug. "You earned it, honey. Congratulations." That night, Evan lay awake in bed, too charged with excitement to sleep. He pictured pedaling a brand new bike, wind rushing in his face. He pictured next summer, maybe a bigger stand, maybe even a second staffer, one of his friends, to help out. He pictured traveling to bigger fairs, or maybe branching out into other products. A million possibilities spun in his mind. But at the heart of it all was the memory of how close he'd come to quitting after those bullies' laughter stung. If he had given up, none of this would have happened. A quiet realization settled over him. Those moments of doubt, the tears he almost shed in frustration, led to the most significant lessons. He'd learned the power of resilience and the value of kindness from a stranger who just happened to be one of the world's wealthiest men. But as he reflected on it, the wealth wasn't the most important part. It was the encouragement, the belief that a small idea could grow big if nurtured properly. That unwavering attitude was what shaped success, not merely the presence of money. Evan closed his eyes, exhaling softly. He felt content, an unfamiliar sense of calm happiness washing through him. Tomorrow, he'd wake up and start planning for whatever came next, whether it was a modest stand on his street corner or a new event in the city. The bullies might still be around, but their words seemed feeble now in the face of what he'd accomplished. In time, he drifted to sleep, dreams filled with swirling lemon-scented images of possibility. He saw himself as a future entrepreneur, building something meaningful, maybe even changing the world, one cup at a time. And the next time someone laughed at him for trying, he'd remember Richard Langford's quiet confidence and how a single believer can turn ridicule into a stepping stone toward greatness. Evan woke the next morning with a sense of purpose. It was a Sunday, a day of rest for many, but his mind buzzed with new ideas. He hopped out of bed, showered, and joined his mom at the breakfast table. Over toast and scrambled eggs, he told her he planned to ride with her to the bike shop later. She smiled at how excited he was, teasing that he should remember to keep some money saved. But she was proud. He could see it in her eyes. They spent the late morning at a local bike store browsing the options. Evan found a sturdy, bright green mountain bike that felt perfect. He paid for it in cash, his face glowing with pride. The store clerk smiled, commenting that it wasn't every day a kid paid with his own money like that. Evan just grinned, remembering how many cups of lemonade had gone into this moment. He spent the afternoon riding around the neighborhood, feeling the difference a well-made bike offered. It glided smoothly across the asphalt. Occasionally, he spotted Travis or Corey in the distance, but neither approached. Instead, they just watched him zip by, a mixture of curiosity and maybe quiet respect in their gazes. He wasn't sure if they'd ever apologize or buy lemonade, but it didn't matter anymore. He felt unstoppable. In the following weeks, as summer drew to a close, Evan juggled a balance. Sometimes setting up his stand for an hour or two, other times riding his new bike with friends who admired it. Word spread about how he'd sold lemonade at a city fair and done really well. Kids who once teased him now asked about his experiences, some even requesting tips for their own small projects. Evan realized that success could shift perspectives. People who laughed before might want to learn from him now. And he tried to be generous, remembering Richard's advice about paying it forward. He'd offer tips, make sure it's fresh squeezed, or pick a spot where people are hot and thirsty, or never give up, even if people tease you. School eventually started, returning him to the classroom. Homework, projects, and extracurriculars took much of his time, so the lemonade stand ran only on occasional weekends. But the dream still lived within him, fueling a quiet confidence. One day, he might do something bigger, build an actual small business, or develop a product line. He kept reading about entrepreneurs, soaking up knowledge. Richard's business card remained pinned to a corkboard in his room, a tangible reminder that big names can come from small places, that a single conversation can reshape a dream. On a crisp autumn afternoon, as leaves began turning gold and red, Evan decided to host one last lemonade sale for the season. The air was cooler, but the day was sunny. With Kelly's help, he set up in the driveway again. Sign updated to say Fall Lemonade. One last taste of summer. People chuckled at the slogan, but were happy to stop by for a nostalgia cup. The sales were modest, but each one felt like a triumphant close to the season. Midway through the afternoon, the bullies, Travis, Corey, and Lindsay, ambled by once more. Evan braced, though he was less worried now. He'd proven himself. He was ready to ignore them if they started mocking him. But to his surprise, Travis paused, glancing at the sign. Corey cleared his throat. Lindsay looked at the sky. Finally, Travis spoke quietly. "You still doing this, huh? Even though it's cold?" Evan shrugged good-naturedly. "Last day for the year, maybe. Want some? It's fresh squeezed." Corey looked at Travis uncertainly. Lindsay fiddled with her phone. Travis sighed, then pulled out a crumpled dollar from his pocket. "Sure, I'll take one." Evan hid his surprise. "Strawberry or original?" Travis mumbled, "Original's fine." He handed the dollar over, looking sheepish. Evan poured a cup, handed it to him, and offered the change. Travis shook his head. "Nah, keep it." Corey and Lindsay exchanged glances, then decided to buy two, each handing over $1. As Evan poured for them, a hush hovered. The tension that once was so thick had dissipated. He realized this was their awkward way of apologizing or showing respect. No one said much, but the moment felt significant. After they got their cups, Travis took a sip. "Not bad," he said, giving a small nod. "Guess you're not just messing around." Evan smiled. "Thanks." "Yeah," Corey added quietly. See you around. Enjoy your new bike." They moved on, cups in hand, leaving Evan with a strange swirl of emotions. Relief, pride, maybe a hint of understanding. The weight of their earlier insults felt lifted. They might never be friends, but at least the hostility had faded. As dusk settled, Evan packed up for the final time that year. He reflected on everything that had happened. The slow starts, the ridicule, the unbelievable arrival of Richard Langford, the city fair success, and the final moment where the bullies actually bought his lemonade. He realized how much he'd grown, not just in business sense, but in self-assurance. A powerful moral lesson crystallized in his mind. No dream is too small to spark something bigger. Mockery might sting, but perseverance yields rewards, both tangible like money for a bike, and intangible, like confidence and self-respect. Sometimes help arrives in the unlikeliest forms, like a passing billionaire who sees potential in a small act of courage. And kindness, once received, can be shared, rippling outward to change minds and open hearts. That night, after storing away the table and leftover cups in the garage, Evan stepped outside one last time. He gazed up at the sky, where the first stars glimmered against a navy backdrop. He smiled, recalling how Richard told him to keep walking his path. That path might twist and turn. Maybe next it would be an online store, or a school fundraiser, or something else entirely. Whatever it was, he felt ready, buoyed by the knowledge that with enough heart, dedication, and willingness to ignore the laughter of doubters, he could accomplish more than he ever imagined. With that warm sense of possibility lighting his thoughts, he turned off the garage light and headed inside, eager for what tomorrow might bring, comforted by the truth that even the smallest stands can lead to the grandest ambitions.